So to give you a bit of an introduction to the Mental Health Commission of Canada, the Mental Health Commission leads the development and dissemination of innovative programs and tools to support the mental health and wellness of Canadians. Through our unique mandate from the Government of Canada, the MHCC supports federal, provincial, and territorial governments as well as organizations in the implementation of sound public policy. The Commission was created in 2007 by the federal government, and originally we had a 10-year mandate to develop Canada's first mental health strategy, to address stigma and discrimination, to build knowledge exchange capacity in Canada, and to address housing and homelessness through the At-Home Chez Soi project. The Commission has been renewed, and our current 2-year mandate focuses on suicide prevention, addictions and mental health, population-based mental health, and engagement with Canadians, provinces, territories, and federal partners. And so it's within these priority areas that we have 2 key initiatives that look at recovery and employment supports, and these are the impetus for today's webinar. So I'll quickly introduce you to both of those areas. The concept of recovery is at the center of much of what the Commission does. It's a central part of the National Mental Health Strategy for Canada and is embedded in much of our work. At the Commission, we sum it up in the taglines, hope, dignity, and inclusion, where recovery is grounded in an understanding of a person as a whole and not as an illness. And that we, along with many others in the sector, are striving to build a recovery-oriented system that holds out hope rather than taking it away, and that supports people to identify their needs and goals, to make informed choices, and to be able to access the services, treatments, and supports that best meet their needs. The Commission has been undertaking work in the area of recovery along with the mental health sector to really shift, inspire, and mobilize and move towards a recovery orientation. In 2015, the Commission released the Guidelines for Recovery-Oriented Practice, and these guidelines explore the concepts that underpin recovery and then translate those into practical actions, skills, and knowledge that practitioners and organizations can explore. To further support the interest that people have in learning about recovery and shifting towards recovery, we've also been hosting a series of webinars, including this one, and have been hosting a number of regional events across the country to host local conversations about what's happening in their mental health and addiction sectors related to recovery. One of the things for me is at the heart of recovery is really about the idea that people set goals and have the opportunity to address those goals. And I was lucky enough to work on the Mental Health Commission's At-Home Chez Soi project on delivering housing first. And that project worked with people who had significant mental health issues and who were homeless. And we worked from a recovery orientation. And one of the really common goals that participants identified was an interest in getting back into employment or working on some educational supports. And one of the things that we found is that the service providers that we worked with on At-Home Chez Soi were often talked about how they felt challenged and how they were be able to support the employment goals of their participants. And this is why the parallel and interconnected work that the Commission is doing in the area of supported employment is so important. And that's because we know that many people living with mental health issues are qualified, skilled, and willing to work, but they face barriers in their attempts to find and be supported to maintain employment. These barriers exist despite the fact that we are seeing a positive trend in Canada over the last 10 years of increased representation of individuals living with a mental health issue in the labor market, increasing awareness of mental health within the workplace, and growing recognition of evidence-based practices and policies that assist with speedy reintegration into the workplace. There's certainly more work to be done to address these barriers. And in 2013, the Mental Health Commission of Canada released the report, The Aspiring Workforce, Employment and Income for People with Serious Mental Illness. And the intent of this project was to identify existing and innovative practices to increase opportunities that help people living with serious mental illness to secure long-term, meaningful employment and income. And the report puts forth a number of recommendations in a number of areas. One is around employers and job seekers. So the recommendations here are about helping employers see the business case to address some of the stigma and attitudes that impact people's ability to access employment, as well as raising awareness around hiring, retention, and accommodation of individuals living with mental health issues. The report also looks at social businesses and the important role that they play in the marketplace, It addresses some of the barriers around disability and income policy reform, and then also looks at supported employment. And the Commission is pleased to have CMHA Ottawa here with us today to provide information on their At Work program that really looks at supported employment as an approach to helping people find and keep jobs in their community. So we encourage you to check out the specific recommendations in the Aspiring Workforce Report. And over the next 2 fiscal years, the Commission is carrying forward this important work by engaging with community stakeholders and policymakers to eliminate employment barriers for individuals living with a mental health problem or illness. And now I would like to turn the webinar over to our guest from the Canadian Mental Health Association, Ottawa, and to introduce our first speaker, Jason Platts. So Jason joined CMHA Ottawa in 2008 and has been working with the Ottawa Inner City Health Team and supporting women that were homeless living with concurrent disorders. In 2016, he became the program manager for the CMHA Ottawa At Work Employment Team. And he is joined by Ken Wright and Charlene Moisey, who are employment case managers and have been with CMHA for over 10 years, as well as their clients Louise Lavisseur, AJ Hawk, and Stephanie Atkinson-Clark. So Jason, I hand the presentation over to you. We're looking forward to learning from you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We're really glad to be here. We'll be talking about, as mentioned, our supported employment program, the At Work program. So I'm going to start the presentation off by talking about CMHA Ottawa, just to get a little bit of context for you as to what we do and the population that we work with. And I'll also introduce our At Work employment program. Ken's going to talk a little bit about, Ken's an employment case manager, and he's going to talk about the supported employment approach that we follow, which is the IPS, Individual Placement and Support model. And he'll also talk about the wage incentives that we offer. Charlene, also an employment case manager, is going to talk today about job development and the process around job searches. And then we will hand it over to the participants of the program that will talk about their experience with our program and with employment. Sorry, I'm just trying to turn the slide over here. So CMHA Ottawa is a nonprofit organization. We're dedicated to promoting good mental health and recovery-based supports to our clients. Our vision is to work toward developing a community that values everyone's human dignity, mental health, and well-being. Our mission is to offer evidence-informed services, promote positive mental health, and an integrated system of mental health services. And I should also mention that we adhere to a person-centered, a client-centered, and strength-based approach, meaning we meet clients where they are at in their community, and we link them to their natural occurring resources. CMHA Ottawa supports individuals with severe and persistent mental illness. We do this by providing an integrated treatment for individuals with co-occurring mental health and substance use disorders. So as you can see on the screen, this is our flow chart. It probably looks a little bit confusing up there, and so I'll summarize that. So this is the service delivery chart, and what this shows is that we offer an array of services to best support our clients with their recovery goals and to live in the community of their choice. Our outreach and case management services work with clients collaboratively to develop and work on goals. The entry points to service with CMHA Ottawa is the homeless shelters, the hospitals, and the court system. We have a Familiar Faces program that provides support to clients with serious mental illness that have repeated visits to the emergency department at the hospitals. And we also have a housing program. We have a dual diagnosis program. We run an array of different groups right through the recovery continuum, as well as we offer groups in cognitive restructuring, dialectical behavior therapy. And the newest addition to the services that we offer our clients is the at-work employment program. By providing this service, we're addressing another social determinant of health.
Jason, it's Amy here. I just wanted to let you know that a few people are having trouble hearing, so if you wouldn't mind speaking up a little bit, that would be great.
Okay, hopefully I'm a bit more clear now. I'm close to the mic. So the At-Work Employment Program is a federally funded program. It is funded through Service Canada, or the Employment and Social Development Canada. CMHA Toronto is the lead agency in a national collaboration between 13 other CMHAs right across Canada. The program started in August of 2015, and it's a 3-year project. And the goal in the 3 years is to connect 1,300 plus people to meaningful employment. The At-Work program is a supported employment program, meaning the focus is on helping participants find competitive employment. We do not focus on pre-vocational training or sheltered workshops. So really the job search starts as soon as the clients that we're supporting identify that they're motivated to work. And from some of the feedback that we've received, the benefits to our program is increased income, self-esteem, improved quality of life, increased autonomy, reduced substance use, and increased choices and opportunities. So now I'm going to pass it over to Ken, who will talk about a little bit more about the IPS model.
Okay, thank you, Jason. So my name is Ken Wright. I work as a case manager here at CMHA Ottawa. So like Jason said, I'll just talk a little bit about the IPS principles, so that the individual placement and support model. We were trained through Dartmouth University. So what we try to do basically is follow an evidence-based approach that supports individuals with mental illness to find and keep jobs. So really what we're doing here is we're meeting with clients where they're at. There is zero exclusion to this program. So if we look at the stages of change, which is something we've been applying to meeting with clients for the first time, people can be referred to us in the pre-contemplative, contemplative, action, preparation, or maintenance stages. And they come to us through their case managers. So in order to access the program, they need to be registered with CMHA Ottawa. The case manager fills out a referral form, and then the team, Charlene, myself, and Jason go through the referral forms and then sort of determine just by reading what the case manager has written where they might be in the stages of change. So then we meet with the participant or job seeker, and sometimes the case manager is there with them, sometimes a family member can be there with them, but often the case is they come in on their own. We have some people that haven't worked for weeks, and we have some people that haven't worked for years. So we meet them where they're at. Some people in the beginning may not know exactly what they're looking for, so we don't do in-depth career assessments or analysis, so we often will refer them out to other places that do that, such as the City of Ottawa. There's a couple university and colleges that also have programs available to people. We will refer them to something that's called career cruising. If they have access to a computer or even a library, they can be looking at what they might be interested in. But for the most part, people do have an idea of what they want to do. So we fill out a 10-page assessment package. We go through things like supports at home, stability with housing, physical health, mental health, substance use, addiction. And really this is a conversation that we have with the individuals over, I'd say 1 or 2, sometimes even 3 or 4 meetings. And then what we do is we try to hit the ground running with them. If they're in the action stage, we're doing things like setting up their resume, going through interview skills, how to approach employers or managers, and then we're actually going out with them and we're doing some of this with them. So what we're doing is we're meeting with the client where they're at. Some people, all they want is a resume. Other people, they just need a couple websites to go to. However, some of the folks that we work with, we're out on the street with, we're approaching managers. We do this differently for everybody. So it's a different dance for every person that we meet. Sometimes we're going in and talking to the employer while the job seeker is waiting outside. Sometimes the job seeker comes in with us, looking to talk to an employer, so we kind of model what we could be saying or what they could be saying to the employer, focusing in on their qualifications. Other times, job seekers want us to disclose mental health challenges or any accommodations they might need. So we're more active and we're talking to the employers more about that. Most of it is well received. Some employers are more receptive than others, and we find with the small and medium-sized businesses, the owners are actually on site, so we can actually chat with them. So it is a competitive job market, and what we do is we try, to let people know that there is a reality in terms of education, work experience, communicating with the interviewer. So they do need to compete against other people to interview for a job. We try to find jobs that are related, obviously, to the candidates, to the job seekers' interests. We also, I can tell you that the most popular ones are video game stores, pet stores, and comic book stores. However, what we try to do is also look at the neighborhood that they're living in. A lot of folks don't want to travel too far. I mean, neither do I, to get to work, so we focus in on their neighborhood as well. But really, it's the job seeker that is directing us into what they're comfortable with. A lot of the folks that we work with don't want to be in the spotlight. They want to work in inventory. They want to work the night shift. So they don't necessarily want to be working on a cash or directly in front of customers. Candidates are trained on the job just like everybody else, and they go through a probationary period just like everybody else. I had already mentioned the zero exclusion. And we don't offer pre-employment or vocational sheltered workshops. We refer out for that. Some people may also want to go back to school. We'll focus in on researching what programs are available to them, and then we turn it back to the case manager. And the relationship with the case manager is just as important as the relationship with the job seeker that you're working with, also with the employers that you're working with too. And then just to finish off, I was going to talk a little bit about incentives. The incentives that we offer with the at-work program to potential employers is pre-screened applicants. So what we're doing here is we're saving the employer some time in going through a stack of resumes. So that's something that we're offering up to employers when we chat with them in the community. We also have a wage incentive. It's approximately $2,000 attached to each client. However, that's flexible, and that can cover up to a few hours of work a week, up to part-time or full-time. And depending on how many hours they're working each week, sort of lets us know how long that subsidy will run for. And this is a huge benefit to medium and small-sized businesses, as they've been telling us as we've been moving along and chatting with employers. We also work with retention rates, so we're available to employers if the job seeker has decided to disclose that they're working with CMHA, so beyond just the at-work program, that they're actually working with a case manager. So we're open to working with employers. We're really here to support the job seekers. We can do that by meeting with them outside of the workplace. We can chat with them about accommodations like taking an extra break when they need it, or having instructions repeated to them, or even having instructions written down. There was a time I went on to a job site, and it was just a matter of writing down all the steps of the job with the job seeker while he was starting his first day of work. Because his anxiety was so high, he just told me, he said, "Ken, I won't remember anything the first day." So I was there to record the information, and it seemed to really help him. He's still working at that same job, and it's been a year. We also give recognition to employers on social media. So if employers want to participate, they can put their logo on the at-work job website. They may also want to post some information about their business too, so it gives them some extra attention and gives them some focus on social media as well. Thank you.
So I'll be speaking a little bit to job development and retention. So based on our client-directed model of working with participants at CMHA, the avenues we access for job development are very much based on individual preferences. As Ken's mentioned, some clients want us to assist them in connecting with employers, while others prefer we take a more discreet behind-the-scenes role. For those who want to complete their search more independently, our approach may include assisting people by informing them of job leads or job fairs, as well as providing support in applying and following up. When we do work with participants who want us to be fully involved in connecting with employers, this includes, as Ken mentioned, going out to meet with employers, whether they're hiring or not. The first contact is often an attempt to make a follow-up appointment, during which the goal is really to learn about the company, the different roles within that company, the skills the employer is looking for, and any patterns they may be seeing in hiring. In the initial contact, we're very much attempting to build a relationship with the employer. Often this may have even begun before we begin working with an individual. At the end of the initial meeting, we may give a brief explanation of our program if it's requested, including the type of help we provide, such as screening employees, access to a wage subsidy, and follow-along supports. As well, we may ask the employer to see if it would be possible to return should we have participants who would be a good fit. This staged approach to job development is consistent with the IPS model, which Ken mentioned earlier. In terms of which employers we are targeting, it's once again based on the preferences of our participants, and we target any organizations or companies that might fit their needs. Also, we always keep in mind what may work best, such as location, type of work an individual is looking for, and past experiences. For example, I'm working with a couple of individuals right now who are also dealing with a substance use issue. They would like to work in kitchen work, but according to them, certain places have a higher incidence of use among kitchen staff. They have also indicated that certain restaurants can be more triggering for them, depending on closing time and the overall feel. So we're looking for locations that may only serve breakfast and lunch or have a more family-oriented feel to it, that focus perhaps more on quality of food and have a different ambiance. We also attempt to place people in an ethical manner that fit both the needs of participants and employers. In terms of follow-along supports, we meet with our clients and possibly the employers very soon after the first shift and on an ongoing basis to review how their shifts are going, any successes, challenges, and possible coping strategies they can incorporate. This is also very much consistent with the IPS model and is somewhat preventative in terms of mitigating issues and dealing with any conflicts immediately. We can also offer assistance in job coaching, whereby we attend the workplace and assist the individual in learning the role. If this is not possible, we can assist participants outside of the workplace by reviewing shifts and speaking with employers. For example, I was recently working with someone who had their first shift and felt a lot of frustration over not having a consistent schedule as a result of the owner not being present. Due to the fact we met within a couple of days of their first shift, we were able to discuss this and problem solve around how the participant could approach his new employer to get the required information. We can also work with participants to access accommodations such as shorter shifts or perhaps flexible hours. Our service is very flexible. We work with individuals indefinitely. Some individuals may enter and leave the program and then re-enter at a later date when they're feeling more ready to work. We also meet with people, as Ken mentioned, in the community or anywhere of their choosing. We also work in collaboration with case managers within our organization to mitigate any issues that may arise as a result of working, such as income management, assistance in getting the appropriate tools for the individual, as well as assistance in reporting income to disability. I'll now pass it on to our participants, and I believe it will be Louise who begins.
My name is Louise, and I always wanted to go out and work because work provided structure and routine. It was also a great diversion. By learning new things, it's made me more confident. There have been challenges at the workplace too. Expectations and pressures from clients or the management are there, but also part of the norm. I found having the support of Ken guiding me through the process of looking for a job was really helpful. He also helped me to do a resume and prepare me for an interview. He went ahead of me to suss out places for possible employment and also asked the manager if they were hiring. Having an occupation is challenging. Developing coping skills in the workplace helps to overcome challenges. These set of skills can be used in a crisis. For example, I've used EBT skills such as this will pass, remain calm, stop and think of what you are reacting to. I figure if I can manage hard times or challenges in the workplace, I can manage them in my personal life.
Now pass it over to AJ.
When I started with the CMHA, one of the first things they did was ask me to set a few goals, and one of those goals was getting a job. And it would have been my first job, so I didn't really have anything to go off of. So when I met with the at-work case manager, she was able to take everything I told her about what I've done in school and volunteering and that kind of stuff, and she was able to sort of dress it up and make it look impressive on a resume. And then she was willing to take me out to job fairs, send me links to websites to look for jobs. Even while at those job fairs, was picking up pamphlets and other things, and always in contact with me. I was lucky in that one of the first places I applied for actually hired me, but she was still willing to, again, picking up more flyers and ads for other jobs. Even after I had started working, she was talking to me, asking if I needed her to talk to the employment at all or anybody at the work. And the program itself has helped me a lot. She was willing to make sure that the job was close to me so that I wouldn't have to worry about transportation or the stress of going far. And even just being in a job itself has tremendously helped my mental health issues, things like anxiety and even agoraphobia. Just being able to get out and do things, it's been a big help.
Now we'll hand it over to Stephanie.
I worked at a video store for a year. I then went through a downward spiral. After 9 years and multiple hospital visits, I finally was told about the at-work program in which I was able to work with both Ken and Charlene. First with Ken, we went through to many places and they gave me interviews, but nothing was going on, and so then I started working with Charlene, and I was given a chance to try out Rockin' Johnny's, but it didn't work out, and so we reevaluated what I should be doing, and I walked into Food Basics a month later and ended up getting hired right on the spot. And since working, I've been more positive, and I've been earning more coping skills to help me through my tough times.
Thank you, Stephanie.
So that concludes our piece of the presentation.
Great. Thank you very much. I really appreciate all of you taking the time to talk to us about your IPS and at-work model. So thank you very much, Jason, Ken, and Charlene, and then in particular, thank you to Louise, AJ, and Stephanie for sharing your experiences. So before we move to the question and answer portion of our webinar, just wanted to remind participants who have called in, that you can download the presentation slides and these list of resources using the file download button on your screen. And then also I just wanted to remind you that the webinar has been recorded, and so that the recording, slides, and resource list will be available on the Mental Health Commission website in the next few weeks. And then now we've actually got about a half an hour to do some questions and answers, and so I've had some questions come in, and I will pose them to the CMHA Ottawa team. and we can see if we can get some dialogue going. So one of the questions that we had was, how does one teach managers or employers about mental health? So for example, it continues to be an issue and potential harassment if an employee living with a mental health issue is seen as a burden within the workplace. So have you done any work around addressing stigma or discrimination with some of the employers?
Yes, we're on. Okay, hi, it's Ken. So a lot of the stigma and the barriers are being faced when we're working with employers in the initial contact with employers. So it's happening slowly. It's one-on-one conversations. We're trying to find the right time to pop in to talk to an employer. We let them know where we're working or what program we're working from, and then usually they have a few more questions. And then sometimes it turns to mental health once the employer knows that we're working not just with the at-work program, but CMHA, the Canadian Mental Health Association. So that happens, and we have employers that can be fully aware that there could be anybody on their staff challenged or struggling with mental health. And then we also have employers that will talk about, their own families and friends, and that really fosters a good conversation. But it's for me, the experience is happening a lot one-on-one. We also did get involved with a business initiative association, the BIA, on Bank Street in Ottawa, and the employers there were really receptive to the program that we're doing. We also had an owner of a local shop had his picture taken, and the job seeker who was working there had his picture taken as well, and that article went up. So it's definitely on people's minds, a lot of employers' minds, and the conversations are what's key that I'm finding right now.
And I think a real focus on skills. Every participant that we have has so many strengths and skills. So as what Ken is saying, those things together, having those open dialogues, but also focusing on what the individual brings to the table and what they can offer the company is really the key discussion to have. If they're not open to it, then we have to accept that and look for where would be a better fit for the individual, though.
That's great. Thank you very much. So we have another question here, and that's around the intake for your program and what intake looks like, and how do you identify if candidates are ready for employment?
So basically, as Ken mentioned, there's zero exclusion, and the intake begins at the point at which typically case managers, they have a weekly meeting during which they're using a strengths-based model, and employment or vocation is often on that strengths-based assessment they've done. So intake is often a result, or I should say referral is often a result of some of those discussions where the individuals identify that employment is one of their goals. We then get, as Ken mentioned, a referral and go over it together to see what stage the individual may be at. We schedule an intake as quickly as possible after we refer that, normally within a week or two, and meet with the individual for at least an hour. And as Ken also mentioned, it could be a few sessions where we're just trying to learn as much as we can about the individual. Some of our participants actually come in feeling like they want to work, however they can't, and that could be for a variety of reasons. Messaging they've received when they have gone out to apply, or past employment, or school or volunteering not having gone well. So to be honest, it's also a process where we're just discussing with people and sometimes reframing some of the things that they've done as really positive experiences, and having a lot of discussions with them around that. So intake is a bit of a process and can take a couple of sessions. I'm not sure if...
Yeah, no, I think that answers all of it. And the case manager is really key for intake as well, because they have a more cultivated relationship with the person they're working with, because they're working in all domains, whereas we're very focused on employment. So keeping in contact with the case manager, who may or may not come into the intake meeting, is also really important too.
Great, thanks very much. So we've been getting a few questions in around the program itself, and just trying to get a sense of kind of how the program is funded and structured. So this will be probably a multi-part question I'm going to pose. So one is, what other CMH locations are offering this program?
Okay, so there's 13 other CMHAs right across the country, from Halifax out to BC, CMHA Ottawa, CMHA Toronto. Off the top of my head, I can't recall all the different CMHAs that are involved, but if you go to the At Work website, you'll be able to get that information.
Great, but it's a national program with, I think you said 13 locations?
Yeah, there's 13 communities involved in this project.
Great. And then, so part B of the questions about the program itself, how many staff in each of the locations are involved in running the program?
I can speak for CMHA Ottawa. So CMHA Ottawa, we have 2.5 staff, not including me, involved in the employment program. But for each site, it's going to be a little bit different. So I would, if I was to guess, it would be between like two and four employment case managers per site.
That makes sense. And do you have a ratio, and maybe this question will be specific to CMHA Ottawa in your experience with the program, but do you have a sense of what the ratio is between case manager, employment supports, and then clients?
So you're asking how many clients each employment case manager would be supporting?
Yes.
Really, there's no specific number that we've attached at this point. We're following people at all stages. So we have individuals that may begin the intake and then perhaps become unwell or hospitalized and kind of put employment on hold for a period of time. Then we have individuals who are in the active job search stage, others that are employed, with which we're just doing follow-along supports and kind of maintenance. So truthfully, there's really no set number. We just work really collaboratively as a team to try to ensure that we're meeting the needs of everybody. At this point, we don't have a wait list. So yeah, I'd say, approximately 30, give or take.
That's great. And about how much time do you typically spend with each client?
I can't answer that one. So this varies. Like Charlene was saying, we're meeting people at different stages because there's zero exclusion is a part of the At Work program. So some people, it's just a handful of hours and they've secured their job. We'll meet people that are already active in their job search, and they'll come in with a copy of their resume or copies and cover letters, and these are all the places they've gone to, and they have another interview the next day. Those folks we're not working with very close, we're not working with for long hours, but then we also have some folks where it takes a lot more time to get ready to go into work, and looking for work is a challenge. So we're out in the community with them. We're using a lot more of our time with folks that struggle in communicating with managers, in looking for work. So it can vary. I would say anywhere from 4 hours to, oh my goodness, there's some folks I've worked with for over a year. So that would be quite a bit of time. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So still a couple more questions kind of specific to the program structure itself. So one is related to the funding, and I don't know if you would have a sense of what the program costs for a CMHA to run. And the other part of that is, does Service Canada fund the entire program? And do you know if there's any likelihood of the funding continuing after 2018?
So I'll start with the latter part of the question. We were absolutely reapplying for continued funding. We've had a lot of success with this program, like right across Canada. In terms of how much Service Canada is giving for the program, I'm not privy to all those numbers. That kind of falls under the umbrella of CMHA Toronto, which is the lead organization.
No, that's great. Thank you. And as part of the At Work program, will you be doing like an IPS fidelity review?
We are currently in a fidelity review. So yes, the IPS model is currently, this is an evidence-based program, and we're currently a part of the research around that.
Great. So now I'm going to shift a little bit because we've been getting a number of questions coming in that's sort of a bit less on the structure of the program per se and a bit more focused on kind of what are the services and what's it like for a client who's participating in this. So one is there a wait time for when an individual applies for these services before they gain access to a case manager?
There's no specific wait time, and we have no wait list. So typically it's just we receive the referral and very shortly after we're doing the intake with the individual, or at least trying to organize the intake with the individual.
And do you provide any services for individuals who are self-employed?
No, we don't. There are around the at-work program, we're working with people that are going into the competitive job market or labor market. We haven't, there's not a focus on entrepreneurship or people that run their own businesses. However, we do refer to the entrepreneurship center and the business, the groups that are involved, that are happening right now in the community. It's already happening organically that they could join if they want to learn how to write a proposal or a grant or build their business. So that's what we do there.
Great, thank you. Another one, we're just flying through these questions fast and furious, and as fast as I'm asking them, more are coming in, so that's great, and thank you to the webinar participants for sending in so many questions. So we'll just keep going because we've got about 15 more minutes before the webinar is done. So one question that came in is around your strengths-based assessment tool, and if you could talk a little bit more about what that is.
Yeah, so I'll start with that on that. So we have a strength-based assessment tool that we do with all the clients of CMHA to really start to try to identify in different life domains, like where their strengths lie. So, you know, for employment, like jobs they've had in the past, people that they know in the community, where their interests and skills are. And it's a tool that really helps flush out people's strengths. And then also it's a great tool for helping people find, you know, what their goals are. And then we can start really trying to create personal recovery plans and to support people in moving towards their goals.
As I mentioned, that's not something that as the employment case managers we do, but as because all of our participants have a case manager, or outreach worker, or familiar face worker, those workers are doing the PRPs with individuals, and that's where employment is typically identified as one of their goals. And after that, that's when the referral to our team is made. So as a team, we don't do the PRPs.
Thank you. So a question came in about the zero exclusion criteria that you mentioned on slide 15. And so could you just speak a bit more about that?
So for the zero exclusion, it's anybody that is registered as a client with CMHA Ottawa. And I think at any given time there could be 1,000 files open. So those folks that are expressing interest in work, or it's on their strengths-based assessment, they've talked about it with their case manager, or the case manager has brought it up with them, anybody can be referred to us as long as they're registered with CMHA Ottawa and they have a case manager or an outreach worker following them. We really need that support there, especially if things go awry in the participant's life while they're working or while they're looking for work. So we rely on the case manager for housing and any physical health issues, social, that type of thing. So people, like just for example, I've met some people at intake and they were hospitalized shortly after. I've met some folks that were going to be coming in for intake and they were addressing their substance use issues, so they were going to rehabilitation, residential rehabilitation for 21 days. we're still available to those folks when they come back from rehab. We can start again. I've watched folks that have come in from being in the hospital for several weeks and jumping back or slowly moving back towards the goal of looking for work. So it's all stages, and we don't exclude everybody as long as they're with CMHA Ottawa.
And just to add to that, like any of our clients that identify that they want to work, we'll support them. So even if somebody's presenting as like slightly lower motivation, like they got other things going on in their life, they're curious about employment, we'll do information sessions, every 4 to 6 weeks, and we can talk to people about employment in our program, and then when they're ready and their motivation, is up and they're ready to work, then we'll start the job search process with them. So we'll work with everybody that is motivated to work.
Thank you. So after, I'm going to do a follow-up question to the one we asked about the strengths-based tool that you use. We've been getting quite a few additional questions just on what the name of it is it evidence-based, and if you could just talk a little bit more about what that tool is that you use.
It's actually, the tool is a Rick Gosha, and it's a strength-based model, and it is a
Evidence-based?
yes, it is evidence-based, absolutely. So if they want to look more into it, just look up Rick Gosha, and you'll find his webpage and all the information there around the strength model, and it's very comprehensive.
Perfect, thank you. And you preemptively answered the next question I was going to ask, which is it a model or tool that others could use? So, so we're Googling right now. So if we're able to find a link, we'll share it on the website. One of the other questions that's come in a little bit is around if you have any suggestions around some best practices that you could offer to others who are trying to run a supported employment program, and in particular related to the job development piece, on what that involves and if there's best practices.
Okay, we can talk a little bit. We can go into all kinds of areas with this, but so some of the job development best practices, I can tell you when we started, we're always learning, so we're learning a lot at the beginning. One practice or one best thing that I've learned is to try to build those relationships with employers when you have a job seeker in mind. It can work out really well if you're speaking about the qualifications of the job seeker when you're talking to the employer and the employer is interested. Doing mass canvassing, which is something I think we started doing in the very beginning, was taking up a lot of our time. So to be just aware of time and time management, we were going out and approaching all the businesses and all the employers, and very often we didn't have job seekers in mind. We were just starting, so we were just starting to build our caseloads. So we found that in some cases employers were interested and they actually had a position available, however we couldn't fill that position. We maintain the relationship with the employer, that's one of the best practices too, to see if there might be positions opening up in the future when we have applicants that are interested in that job. However, yeah, so that's one of my suggestions is the mass canvassing can take up a lot of time, and trying to build that one-on-one relationship with the employer, just as we do with the clients that we're working with, is key.
Great, thank you very much. So we probably have time for about 5 more minutes worth of questions, and I think we have more questions than we have time to get to, but we've been jotting them down and are doing our best to get through them. One of the questions that's come in, or a couple of the questions are around sort of what does the case manager, what can the case manager do to really ensure that the employment experience is successful for the client? So are there things that you would do to address potential accommodations issues, monitoring the kind of the health and wellness, or working with the client around their health and wellness, kind of those kinds of things? Is there a mechanism for employees to raise any kind of concerns that they might have with their employers that have been placed through the program?
I'm not sure if this will exactly answer the question. There's a few things in there, but I would say the ongoing kind of access to support is really key. I have to say one piece of when we're going out to job develop with individuals and find a position for them, a lot of our discussions are around what's happened in the past, what's worked and what hasn't worked for you, so that we know when an individual is becoming employed, potential issues that may arise. And as I mentioned earlier, meeting with them whether it's immediately after the initial shift and on an ongoing basis to discuss how things are going, the challenges, because they may present themselves again, and how do we work around that. So that's definitely one piece.
There could be some practical pieces here, just in terms of most of the people we're working with have a fixed or limited income. They're receiving Ontario Works or Ontario Disability Support Social Services. So we do offer, if it's a clock they need, if it's a watch they need, those are the practical things that can happen. Uniforms, I can tell you there was one place a young man was working at where they were going to charge him, well, they did, $50 for his T-shirt that he needed to wear on the job. That was something that was way outside of his budget on a limited income, so we could offer that as well.
Excellent. So have time for probably just a couple more questions. One is related to what is your success rate, and I think a follow-up question to that is, and how would you define or what do you consider to be a success in your program?
That's a good question. I think if participants are coming into the program and, they're looking for jobs, they're applying, and it's improving their self-worth, that's a success. People are getting jobs, they're getting an income, they're working in the settings that they want to work in. That's a measure of success. So it's if clients are happy with the service that they're getting and they're happy, being employed, that's a marker of success for us.
Just to sort of piggyback on what Jason was saying, we'll get calls or we'll interact with folks, case managers or clients that will tell us, they're talking to more people. The isolation is broken. These are the barriers that are all around mental health, and also folks that are working or living in poverty. It gets them out of their apartment. It connects them to other people. The socialization starts. I've heard through clients and case managers alike, sometimes there could be a reduction in substance use. Sometimes they may be starting to think about, I think I want to go back to school. I want to build on a career. And then, there was one phone call that I got that was close to Christmas, and it was from a gentleman that was holding down a dishwashing job in a restaurant. And he had been there now for 8 months at that time, and when he called, he was just calling to say thank you, and he can buy a couple extra gifts for his nieces and nephews. So that was phenomenal and successful in my mind.
That's great. Thank you very much for that. So I just wanted to take a minute to kind of close out and finish up the webinar, and to really thank the team at CMHA Ottawa. Again, thank you very much for your time coming and sharing your experiences and thoughts with the At Work program. So in particular, thank you to Jason, Ken, and Charlene for talking about kind of how the program works. And then again, in particular, to Louise, AJ, and Stephanie, thank you very, very much for sharing your experiences. That was really great to hear about kind of how you've experienced the program. I think it was clear from the number of questions and the discussion that we had that there's a lot of interest in this topic, and that the connection points between recovery and employment is something that's really important to a lot of people working in the mental health sector. So we really appreciate that you took the time to talk to us about this, share some of your thoughts and experiences on best practices. It was really great. So we are going to close out the webinar. There was a slide that said that for those of you who had joined us on the webinar, there will be a satisfaction survey, so we encourage you to fill that out if you wouldn't mind. It helps us to understand kind of where we can improve the series and what kind of topics or ideas might be of interest. So I want to thank you all for taking an hour out of your day to join us to talk about employment and recovery. And again, here's some contact information from our presenters, and I hope you all have a good day.
Thank you.